Welcome to the monthly Paddle Blitz, where I give you rapid fire thoughts on the paddles that I've been testing this month. Quick takes, real thoughts, no script. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, Braden here with Pickleball Effect. For this month's Paddle Blitz, we're looking at the updated Selkirk LUXX. I have the new 14 and 16 millimeter Scorpeus Pro IVs. I'll be comparing those to the Paddle Tech, Ripple, and Carbon True Foam. And then we're going to finish it off with the Friday Fever, which is the first $100 Gen 3 style paddle. So thanks to all these brands for sending me these paddles. However, this video is not sponsored by them, but if you do decide to pick up any of these paddles, you can please use the links and discount codes in my description that goes to support my channel. So starting with the LUXX, this is an iteration or an update of the original LUXX. This is Selkirk's most popular selling model from what I understand. This is a control style paddle. The new one is more aggressive. It's more of a modern style control paddle versus the original LUXX, which was more of a pure control paddle. This absorbed pace really well for you, did a lot of the work to slow the ball down, whereas this one gives you just a little bit more offense, particularly on counters. You can feel it. There's a little more punch, a little more counter speed there. I think this, meets the demands of the modern game of pickleball better than this one does. It's still a control paddle. It doesn't have enough punch to it, enough offense to it to take it out of the control category, but it does give you a little bit more. With the original, you had to put a little extra into anything, whether it was a counter or a drive, to get any sort of offense out of it. The offense comes a little bit more naturally with this one. It even has a little bit of a springy feel to it, and you have that extra offense without over swinging and trying to do too much. So I like what they did to make this a little bit more offensive and to meet players' needs there. Additionally, they added InfiniGrit to the surface. This is a big upgrade in spin. The out of the box spin versus the original LUXX is much better. You're getting more spin out of the box, and the spin is lasting longer. For my tests, InfiniGrit lasts and is just as good as raw carbon fiber. I don't know if it's better than raw carbon fiber, but from the testing I have done, I know it's at least just as good. This allows Selkirk to do their fun designs while keeping that the spin that players need. And this was a big deal to me, especially at this price point. You needed the spin to last. You needed some better generation there. That was a big drawback of the original. Additionally, they changed the throat hole down here. They made this a little bit bigger, and then they added some foam down here, like the bottom fifth that covers the hole. That foam does change the feel of the paddle quite a bit, and it's probably why it has just a little bit more offense. But when you hit the center, it feels very plush. It's very dense. It's really smooth. It's a really nice, very comfortable feel, whereas the original had a little bit more of a hollow feel to it. But the feel is a little less consistent across the face versus the original. The original felt the same wherever you hit it, whether closer to the sides in the middle, whereas this one, as you kind of move closer to the sides, you can feel a little more instability versus the original. It's not a dramatic change, but you can feel it change a little bit more compared to the original one. And it's not quite as stable as the original. They did make this one 19 millimeters, whereas the original was 20. And I think the 20 millimeter had a little bit better stability to it. So when we're looking at the numbers, twist weight wise, they're about the same. The new one has 5.83. The original had 5.78. Both of these had static weights of 8 ounces. And then the swing weights were a little bit different. So you had a swing weight increase of 2 for this one. So this was 117. The old one was 115. So you do lose a little bit of maneuverability, but you do get that added offense. I did end up adding some 1/2 gram of my new tuning tape here in the throat just to improve the stability and bring that balance point down a little bit, because it is a little bit heavier. And so that kind of fixed the issues I was talking about earlier, where it made the sweet spot better and also made the fill a little bit more consistent. So I like that I like the way it played better with some added weight. Overall, I think they did a good job with this. It definitely feels like an upgrade. I think that added offense and spin is enough for people who love the original LUXX to go to this one, but just know that you are going to have a little bit of weight increase, and I think this one plays better with a little customization, some weight down here in the throat. But when you're thinking like value for these paddles, these are going to retail high 200s. That control category is pretty packed. I don't find myself recommending these too often over the 11/6/24 jelly beans, just because of the price savings is too much. Those are $100. These are going to be high 200s. But if you did love the original LUXX, you want to stick with it, I do think it's a good upgrade. And if you want their fun colorways and you want their limited lifetime warranty, then you can go that route. Next, we have the JOOLA Pro IVs. So the Pro IVs have been out for a few months now. When they first launched, they only came out with the the Perseus model. This is the Scorpeus model. So the Perseus was elongated. This is their wide body shape. And these played just kind of what I expected. After doing that review of the Perseus, you can go watch it. You can pretty much apply everything I said in that video to these paddles when you're comparing these to the original, or just to the 3S models, the 3S Scorpeus models. So they have a little bit smoother feel to them. The balance points are brought down. They do feel a bit more maneuverable compared to the 3Ss, but the power and pop is the same. They're still very offensive paddles. But there was just no surprises here. You just kind of make the changes that you'd expect going from elongated to a wide body, where you get the extra maneuverability. You lose a little bit of firepower, but not a ton. And then the differences, you gain maneuverability, you gain sweet spot size, right? And then the differences in feel between the 16 and the 14 was what you'd expect to. The 16 has just a bit more total firepower over the 14. The 14 doesn't have as much pop as the 16. I thought the 14 was easier to control, but you do have to deal with the firmer feel that this one has. The TFP, the foam they added down here at the throat, does improve the feel. Makes them feel a little bit smoother, not quite as harsh as the 3S models, though these are still both on the stiffer end when you compare them to the the broad spectrum of all paddles out there. So to me, I think these are, there's only 3 models out there that in the wide body shape that are true power paddles. You have these, you have the Ronbus Ripple that's going to be released here in about a week, and then you have the PaddleTech Bantam ESQC 12.7. And all 3 of these paddles have a little bit different flavor. So of these 3 different models, I think the JOOLAs are the easiest to pick up and play. They have the firepower, the power and pop is there, but they're not quite as poppy as these other 2, the Ripple and the PaddleTech. So they're easier to control because of that. But for the vast majority of people, I think the pop is enough to do what you need to do when you're at the net for counters and whatnot. But yeah, those ones are a little bit easier to control. The swing weights are lighter at 111, so they're very maneuverable. They have room to be customized. A lot of good things about those. But these 2 other paddles that are in the same power category for wide bodies do give you a little bit different flavors. The profile of the Ronbus it's heavier than the JOOLAs, but you get more total firepower. The top end power and the pop are both a little bit more than the JOOLAs, so you just get more firepower in general, but it is heavier, so you lose some maneuverability there. The swing weight for this, I believe, is 117. I didn't write that down, but if I remember correctly, that's what it is. So it is heavier, you lose maneuverability, but you gain total firepower. Plus it has a more comfortable feel. So this has like an EVA foam core that's supported with some carbon fiber rib structures. So it has a more comfortable feel. It's not nearly as harsh feeling as the JOOLAs. And so I think that's an advantage the Ripple has over the JOOLAs. And that's those are the main differences there. But when we're looking at the PaddleTech, this one has a really unique profile where it's extremely poppy, but is also very lightweight. So you get this combination that just makes it very, very deadly at the net. Pop is just so big. You don't have to do much. Keep your strokes compact. The speed is just always there when you're at the net. And it's just so lightweight. I have a weight on all 4 corners here because it's not very stable out of the box, but even adding weight, it still feels significantly more maneuverable than these other 2 options. But it's not quite as powerful from the baseline, but I also think that makes drops and drives a bit easier to control versus these other ones. All these paddles have great spin. That's not really a consideration. It's more of just deciding what profile you want. Go with this one if you want that extreme maneuverability and high pop. This is probably the deadliest paddle out there at the net at the moment. Go with the Ripple if you want a more comfortable feel and you want as much firepower, power and pop as you can get. I think this maxes out limits. It is both of these are poppy enough where you need to be a high skilled player to manage these when you're being attacked, when you're stretched out, when you're trying to slow the ball down. These do not do any of the work for you. You have to slow the ball down yourself. And so when you're on defense and those types of things, these paddles are more difficult to manage in those scenarios. So I would recommend these 2 options for higher level players who have the skill to slow the ball down on their own. These, while they're still poppy, they're not quite as poppy as these other 2. They're easier to control. The dwell time's there. And I think these 2 are the most approachable power paddles of the mix here. But yeah, those are my thoughts on those. I want to quickly compare the Scorpeus Pro IV to the Carbon True Foam, just because I know people are going to ask me about it. So this is the paddle I've been playing for the last few months. It's an aggressive control style paddle where the Scorpeus models are true power paddles. So you don't get as much power, you don't get as much pop, but you do get a much better feel. These have a very dense, very plush, very intuitive feel to them that I just love about this paddle. But out of the box, I think it needs a little customization to play its best. A lot of people ask me what my setup is. I ended up adding 3 grams on each side of this paddle. Depending on how heavy the paddle is, determines where I put these 3 grams. If it's on the heavier side, I'm gonna put a little lower like this one. If it's a lighter one, I'm gonna maybe move this up about a 1/2 inch or so. But when you, I just think it needs that weight to carry through the ball, particularly from the baseline on drives. It just needs a little extra plow through there, which is that gives to me, and it trues up the sweet spot, makes it a little bit more stable. But it does make it feel pretty sluggish. So this is heavier than the Scorpeus models, but it's not quite as heavy as the Ripple. So I just throw a 6 gram weighted coin there at the bottom, and that helps it feel more maneuverable. But yeah, this one needs some customization out of the box. These JOOLAs are stable enough and heavy enough that I didn't feel like I needed to weight these up, though you can if you want. There's certainly room for some customization there. The Ripple's pretty heavy out of the box. It's going to be trickier to customize. I haven't messed with any customizations yet, but yeah, this one also, the Paddle Tech also needs weighted out of the box. It's just way too light. Between the JOOLAs, the Paddle Tech, and the Ripple, those are your best options. Those are the only true power paddles in the wide body shape that I've played with so far. And there's a few different kind of profiles and flavors there for you to pick from. Last paddle I'm going to talk about is the Friday Fever. So this is a Gen 3 paddle. It's $100. When you look at the X-ray, it's not a floating core Gen 3. It's that diving board style, but the extra foam on the side goes a little bit lower down here on the face compared to a JOOLA. And that was the only difference that I noticed there. But yeah, it's so light. Let me just read these numbers because it explains how it plays pretty well. So out of the box, its static weight is 7.75 ounces, swing weight 113, twist weight 5.66. Swing weight 113 for an elongated is just extremely light. That's going to be bottom 3 percentile for elongated paddles if it's not the 1 percentile. So extremely light out of the box. It doesn't have a ton of power initially, but when you add some weight to it and you break it in a little bit, then it comes to life. I've been playing this pretty consistently. I don't know how many hours I have it on exactly, but I've been playing with it consistently for a couple of weeks. And with this weight, it's in that 11.624 power range. So it's a power paddle, but it's not just this huge power paddle, which I think is good, especially for the Friday's kind of target market they shoot for those people that just want their first performance paddle. This is a good power level for that group, but also for a lot of people who are looking for stuff in that range. But yeah, it's too flimsy and too light out of the box. You add some weight and it feels good. So this is 2.5 or 3 inches of 1/2 gram, and then I have about 1.5 inches of 1/2 gram up here in the corner. I originally had this all in one piece, ended up moving one higher just to get a little more plow through and to carry through the ball a bit better. I like this setup. It just needed that weight to have it to do anything. But yeah, they did a good job. I think the reason I brought this up is just because it plays like you would expect a Gen 3. It has that hollow feel. The power is there. This is the first true power paddle at $100. And even the spin is solid. It has a raw carbon fiber face. My numbers were averaging just above 2,000. So the spin's great. Not too much to complain there. I think it's interesting that they went so light, especially considering their target market is that kind of beginner getting that first good paddle people where they need that extra stability. And when you have a paddle that's this light and elongated, you're just not going to have that stability. I imagine they'll launch more shapes in the future, but at the moment it's just this elongated paddle. But yeah, that's a great option if you're very budget conscious and don't want to spend over $100 and want a true power paddle, but just know that you're going to need to customize it to get the best out of it. So there you go. That's everything I have for you. I hope that helped. Let me know what paddles you want to see me do next month. Thanks for watching.
Dun, 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 dun.